Hi. Hello.
Hi.
You of
How are
Edinburgh
you?
should know how to use it, you see. So I knew you'd be quick to come connect straight away.
How are you?
I'm really good, thank you. Really good.
Good
Right.
to see you.
Hi everyone, and welcome to our first Instagram in conversation in May after a brilliant lineup in April. We're excited about all the conversations that we have planned this month, but today I'm delighted to be joined by my good friend Nicola Mendelson, CBE. Now, the awesome Nicola is the advertising powerhouse who is Facebook's Vice President of Europe, Middle East and Africa, the company's most senior position outside the US. Nicola became president of the Institute of Practitioners in Advertising in 2011. In 2014, she was among GQ's 100 most connected women in Britain and 85th on the Jewish Chronicle's Power 100 list. She was named one of the most inspiring women in European tech by the Inspiring 50 organisation in 2015 and included in Debrett's 500 People of Influence. In the Queen's Birthday Honours 2015, she was awarded a CBE for services to the creative industries, and since 2012, she's been industry chair at the Creative Industries Council. So many accolades, Nicola. Welcome. We're delighted to have you. So how are you?
Yeah, I'm doing all right. We're in, I think, week 8 or 9 as a family. We went into lockdown early, but actually we're in good spirits, and I'm definitely practicing gratitude every day.
Well, that's a good habit. So you're not killing each other. You're all still happily coexisting in lockdown.
Oh, we've got 4 kids at home. We have our moments, I'm not going to lie, but actually on the whole, it's been very special. I never expected to spend this much time with our children who are older, a lot of them now. You know, we have a 23-year-old, a 21-year-old, 18 and 15. So no, we never expected this, but I'm loving it.
It's a bonus.
Totally.
And how are they coping? Because I'm hearing mixed reports from people with sort of older kids at home who weren't expecting to be at home at this point.
Yeah, so I think it's different depending on what age any of your children are. So I think if you've got kids under 5, I think that's incredibly difficult because they can't be left alone. You've got to be homeschooling. You've got to be with them every second of the day. Older children can get on with it, but it's very challenging for them not to be with their friends, not to be doing the things they thought they would be doing. We were supposed to be doing A-levels now, that's gone. So trying to help children find their purpose, not being with their friends, boyfriends, girlfriends, you know, these are difficult things, but finding moments that can mean different things in different ways, I think that matters. Well,
look, thank goodness we've got digital connections. So that's a good jumping off point to talk about you and your career. So you're the most senior Facebook exec outside of the US. Obviously, that sounds like an absolutely enormous job. It is an enormous job. Can you just give us a flavour about your average day? What's it like?
Well, I can honestly say that no 2 days are ever the same. And that's true whilst I'm at home. And that was true beforehand. So in the world, people are calling it BC, the world before COVID. I was on a plane constantly. I was always traveling, jumping around different countries, you know, meeting with different groups of different people. But I am definitely not doing that. So I've been very much at home for the last eight or so weeks. But it is coming together with people. People is at the heart of everything that we do, whether it's the users of our platforms that are using groups, or whether it's working with politicians, whether it's with business leaders, small and large size businesses, whether it's connecting women. You know, like you, I'm passionate about really helping women get on in business. So no 2 days are ever the same, but people at the heart of everything.
And how did you start off? Obviously, you're a very prominent leader in tech now, but how did you get your job at Facebook? Talk to us about how that happened, because you moved from the advertising industry into that role quite a few years ago now.
Yeah, just coming up for 7 years ago since I joined Facebook. So I spent 20-something years in advertising, very much on the account handling side, but absolutely loved it. And there's a lot of similarities with, you know, the business side of tech as well, which our business model is a lot about advertising. And so it was taking a lot of the learnings that I had from working in advertising and then bringing them into the world of Facebook. And Facebook back in 2013 was a very different company. We'd only just acquired Instagram. We didn't have WhatsApp, we didn't have Messenger and Oculus and Portal and Workplace. So it's really changed. And that's definitely true of my job, that, you know, no 2 days are the same, but no 2 years are the same as well, because there's so much innovation, so much change, so much new product development. So there's always surprises.
But your career certainly from the outside, looks like an absolute rocket ship. Can you give us a few tips or strategies for how you have basically continued to move upwards throughout your career?
So I never had a ground plan. Here's my first tip. I never had that. I was never one of those people that was sat there going, one day I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. I always had a longer term plan, which was that family was the most important thing for me. I always knew that I wanted to have family. I always knew I wanted children. I was lucky to find my husband. We came together at university. We were very young, and he had similar kind of values and ideas and plans about family at the heart. So that's where we started. From a career perspective, it was always to make sure that I was working in companies where, and with people that I admired, where I was learning, where I was being stretched and enjoying what I was doing. And that's the commonality between everything that I have done, is that I was doing new things and that I was working with people I liked and admired. So there was no grand plan.
But have you had inspirational people that you've looked to throughout your career? Because obviously you've got very well-known bosses, I suppose, at Facebook, who a lot of people would probably love to be inspired by. Have they been an inspiration, or who else along the way?
Yeah, there's absolutely no question. So before I joined Facebook, I was a huge fan of Sheryl Sandberg, the work she was doing with women, with Lean In, which was about the time that I joined, but also Mark and his vision of connecting the world. But right back to my early career, I was fortunate to work for an agency called Bartle Bogle Hegarty. And I literally I sat outside John Bartle and Nigel Bogle's office for a decade. And you just pick up almost through osmosis the tips and the tricks and those leadership styles and qualities, both some you want and some you don't want. And that sort of all just went into the percolator around. But that wasn't the only place that I took influence as well. I took influence from the different managers that I had. Often the manager that's just above you is the person that can help you the most in your career. And I've had some fantastic ones throughout my career.
And what about your leadership style? Because you are very a positive kind of ball of energy is how I always think of you. Has your leadership style morphed through your career, or do you feel like you've always been like that? You know, because obviously you've been singled out as somebody with masses of potential by your bosses or by other companies. Is that something in you, or is it something that you've learned, and can we all learn?
I definitely think people can learn. There's no question. And I think you can develop, it's a muscle. And so you have to educate yourself as to how to be the best that you can at it, like anything. It's not just something that you're sitting there and one day you kind of go, aha, now I'm a leader. I always had it in me. I think maybe some do. You know, you hear the things, you see children at school going, that one looks like a natural leader. And I think that is true. I see that with friends' children, you know, they stand out, they're wanting to push themselves. But I do think it was about, you know, being curious, always that desire for the new, thinking ahead. Painting a vision as to where you can get to, embracing technology, embracing creativity, being really thoughtful about people. I think not enough is thought about the real human side of leadership as well. And I think that's a change that we're seeing, especially during the crisis, which is who's showing up for their people at this time, who's demonstrating care and kindness and empathy. I think those things really matter.
Yeah, now let's talk a little bit about your books. You're super busy, but you still managed to publish a book earlier this year, Make It Work, which featured advice from pioneering businesswomen. Amazing, congratulations for that. Can you tell us a bit more about it and what inspired you to write it?
Yeah, so it really came from the question that you were asking earlier around, you know, where you get advice from, who's been your kind of your cheerleaders and your helpers. And often we look too far ahead into the distant. Like if only Sheryl Sandberg would be my mentor kind of thing, then everything would be solved. And the reality is that we can look for inspiration in so many different places. And so what I'm fortunate to know people like you, to be able to know people like Debbie, and I could ask you questions around things, but many can't. So this was about just getting all the answers in one place from 14 amazing, inspiring women that other people then can pick up and learn the same tips and tricks, whether they want to be entrepreneurs, whether they want to work in big businesses. It didn't matter. It's there. And so we've got amazing stories in there from the likes of Dame Vivian Hunt, which is all about being your true, authentic self. And that's something that women definitely struggle with, kind of getting to grips around how they can actually not be a version they think of themselves, but actually be the best person of themselves and the things they care about and their values. There's another one from Grace Beverly, who's a really inspirational 23-year-old serial entrepreneur at the age of 23, who just keeps cracking out great ideas. And there was a lot of bias against her because she was so young. But actually, a good idea is a good idea. And I think if technology is teaching us anything anymore, it's a real democratization of where we are. Good ideas will shine through, and they can come from anywhere. So lots of tips and tricks in there. And the thing with the book is it's free. So we've made it available to all, hard copies to all schools, but more important to that, and via the Prince's Trust, but more important than that, it exists as an ebook, so anybody can go out and get it on our She Means Business hub and website. That's where it's available.
That's amazing. We'll come on to talk about She Means Business a bit more. I've heard Cheryl talk about this, and you've sort of talked about this as well, about this thing around finding a role model, finding a mentor. Do you think it's important for us all to try and do that? And is it something that is easy to do? And should we be looking for different role models and mentors throughout our career, or kind of stick with one?
Yeah, no, I mean, the way that I think and frame this up is that all companies have boards. And they're independent advisors that come in and, if you like, speak truth to you. And I think you need that for yourself. And in our personal lives, I think we do that with our friends. Your friends you look to for advice. You know, you remember those days of dating. Is he right for me? He said this. What do you think? I'm doing that with, you know, my daughter and her girlfriends at the moment. But I think women have not been very good at understanding how to apply that into the workplace as well. And so we need that same group around us for work, and they can be from different places, different backgrounds, and at different times. I do think at different stages of your career you need different advice, and so you shouldn't be afraid to be able to kind of swap one in and swap one out. And you should also not be afraid to ask people. And when I've asked people through my career, people have been very generous with their time, and you know, they've really helped me a lot.
I think it's important, isn't it, to have that sort of diverse opinion around you as well, because our friends often tell us what they think we want to hear. Whereas if you've got different people from different industries, and you also have to have that sort of loving critic, as Debbie and I like to talk about it, we will say to each other, well, you know, yeah, that was good, but you could have done that a little bit better maybe. And we do it from a sort of, hopefully, a loving point of view. And I think people are sometimes have a massive expectation that they can get everything they need from one single mentor without thinking about that as a board. I think that's really, really good advice.
Yeah, they're not going to wave a magic wand. A mentor or a coach is not going to wave a magic wand, nor should they. And you get the most out of it if you come having really thought through what are the issues that are on your mind at the moment, that you've made the time for yourself to think that through. Then that person can respond better.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned that you have given the book away for free to lots of schools, and I know you feel very passionately about young people, and you know, it's something we think about a lot with AllBright as well, and how we can upskill and connect many more young people. How do you feel that we need to remove the obstacles for the next generation of women so that they can, you know, smash the glass ceilings faster than you and I did?
Yeah, I think a lot of it's getting better, but I think it depends on the company that you see. And it's going to be really interesting what happens through the crisis in particular, because there's already some warning signs coming through that women are going to suffer disproportionately as a result of the job losses that happen. And even who's able to, if you are able to work from home, who is able to do that? Who's taking on more of the lion's share of looking after, you know, the children or the house duties or whatever it is. So I think it is a challenging moment. But I think ultimately it will be about the companies that do well, because all the research tells us are the companies that have diversity across the board at all levels. And that is purely a data thing based on financial performance. If you want to do better, if you want to be in the top right of companies that have give better profits, give better returns to their shareholders, you will have diversity across the spectrum.
So I know you've talked about this a lot in the past about the importance of a support network. Obviously, that's something we have massively in common, a support network of women, and also speaking up for women in meetings. Do you want to just talk a little bit about how you view your sort of supportive sisterhood, if you like, in your career?
Yes, gosh, so many different times. Going for jobs, that's definitely one of the most important. Asking for a pay rise, and that's something that, you know, girlfriends of mine still role play with me, like making sure you've got your arguments worked out. One of my very close girlfriends literally had not prepared for a salary review in 20 years. And she happened to mention it. I was like, well, then you're not taking your job seriously if you haven't done that. And she goes, what do you mean? And she's not in an organization like I've been in, where people talk about their feelings. She's in finance, and, you know, we share everything. And I said, but if you're not doing this, no one else is going to take it serious. If you don't know your own market worth, nobody else is. And if you don't come and present really clearly about this. So I was like coaching her through this. And then she came back, she went, smashed it. You know, she not only did she get her pay raise, she got more than she was expecting. And, you know, they kind of said, you know, you haven't done this before. And I learned that after when I did my first resignation, when I left BBH after 12 years. And they offered me a shed load of money there and then. And I was just like, how could my worth have gone up between half an hour ago? And that was a really good moment for me to take stock and realize that I hadn't been taking my career seriously. I was almost grateful to have a job, because at that point I had 3 children, rather than thinking through what my value was. And so that's certainly an area that you know, my girlfriends, my kind of gang have been able to help me with.
It's so true. We always talk about this. You have to try and practice those important conversations. Why do you think women are so scared, or not all women, but often scared about talking about money?
I don't know, but it is definitely a real thing, and there's an embarrassment around it. And I think the more that it's socialized, the more that people do share these things. But not just that, it's also about practicing, you know, practicing difficult conversations, practicing, you know, giving feedback, practicing doing a big pitch. All of these things don't happen by natural. And I think what's happened in the past, back to the network, is I think men always had networks, so they always learned by osmosis, just seeing what was happening around them. Whereas women didn't have that in the same way. And so those informal networks of where you learn on the job weren't there and weren't being created. So it's almost like it's a big secret that we're now all sharing with each other, but like, it's really important.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it covers everything across all different areas of where you go to for advice, where you go for learning, and then where you share best practices with one another.
It's quite interesting, isn't it? Because it's often only when you get into a leadership position that you start getting media training, or you're asked difficult questions and you'll sort of role play that before your shareholder meetings or whatever it is. But it's rare to do that early on in your career. I mean, I wish I had. I remember the first time, like you, when I was sort of practicing with my husband how to ask for a pay rise. I still absolutely squirmed when I did it. But had I been doing that right from the beginning of my career, rather than, as you said, just being grateful for a job, then, you know, who knows, I might be a millionaire by now.
I remember a similar thing of going into the toilets once at work, like 20 years ago, and somebody was practicing the final performance of the pitch in the toilets, and I was like, what is going on? I was like, that's how you make it look so easy and natural. You've learned it. Nobody tells you those sorts of things.
I know, it's only when you see comics and, you know, you realize that they've practiced all of those gags and the timing and everything, and it's just so important. Debbie and I always try and sort of role play important conversations or even important meetings, because you have to try and figure out who's going to pick which part, but you don't do it so much when you're on your own. So that's great advice. Anyway, we could talk about that all afternoon, but I will move on. So look, I wanted to talk about your one thing that you are very much known for, is your grit and determination. And in 2016, you were diagnosed with follicular lymphoma, which is a rare form of blood cancer. Are you able to tell us a little bit about the diagnosis and the effect that it's had on your life?
Sure. So it was November 16, and I was well. I was living kind of this very full life, traveling all over the place, and wasn't ill in any way whatsoever. I had no symptoms, nothing. The only thing I did have was a lump in my groin, like this big, tiny, the size of a pea, not even. And I've got a girlfriend, she's in my gang, and I phoned her and I said, I found this. And she says, probably nothing, girls get that, don't worry. If it's still there in 2-3 weeks time, come and see me. So it didn't go. I went to see her, and because she's my girlfriend, I could, you know, when you see the face change, I was like, you don't like this, do you? And she went, nah, I don't. But I wasn't that worried. I really wasn't. And I know I wasn't that worried because she sent me to see another doctor, and I didn't ask for John to come with. So I was kind of just took it in my stride. And he thought I was fine, but he said, literally as I was just going, he went, given that you're here, maybe we should just do a scan. And so I was like, okay, did a scan, went home, thought nothing of it. And then I must have been busy because I wasn't looking at my phone. And a few hours later, I saw my phone and I had a gazillion missed calls from her, my friend, the doctor, and this other doctor. And I just remember that was the moment that, well, my stomach literally, it's physical. And I said to John, I said, this is going to be bad news. So I phoned her and she said, have you spoken to him? And I said, no. She says, I'm coming over right now. And that began the journey, which basically the scan had showed tumours everywhere. I had tumours up and down my body, which totally, it was like, whoa. I know we're all in a sliding doors moment at the moment that we sort of can't imagine what life was almost like before, but that's what it felt like. And then you go on a conveyor belt of getting the diagnosis, working out what's happening. And it turns out that mine is follicular lymphoma, which is an incurable blood cancer that you can live with, that there are different treatments, but they can't cure it. And so at that point, I decided that I wasn't going to do treatment till I needed it. And that was 3 years ago. And then 18 months ago, I did need chemotherapy and immunotherapy. So that's kind of where I'm up to.
But look, in your sort of true determined style, you basically went back to work quite quickly. I think a lot of people assume that they'd get that sort of diagnosis and they'd be off, you know, wanting to travel the world or giving up work or whatever. And you threw yourself back into work. How do you navigate that, your very challenging career and living with incurable cancer?
So you do have that moment where you kind of go, oh, you know, do I need to reevaluate? I feel it was almost like a cliche that I need to reevaluate everything. And actually, I'd always practiced that anyway. If things weren't right, if I wasn't happy, then I would address it and deal with it in the moment. And so actually, I didn't change very much. You know, I love my husband, I love my family, I love my job. I am very, very lucky, and I don't take that for granted in any way. So I didn't want to change any of that. I had a lousy diet. I did absolutely no exercise. And those were things that I could do something about and make those changes. So I did make those changes. Sometimes I've been as good at it, you know, cutting sugar out. I did a lot of that. I'm having a bit of lapse at the moment, but come on, that's fair. Fair enough, right? In the circumstances that we're in. But what I also realized that I needed to put my energies into dealing with this in a different way. So we set up a foundation to work towards finding a cure for the cancer. That's what I've done.
And talk to us about what obviously the goal is to find a cure, but it's quite an unknown cancer, wasn't it, before you sort of created this charity?
Yeah, so there's never been a charity for follicular lymphoma. Blood cancer has got really low awareness, and especially for women with it, often gets misdiagnosed. Some of the symptoms are things like fatigue, night sweats, feeling a bit, you know, they're classic things, especially women in their 50s get misdiagnosed. It's the menopause, don't worry. And there really isn't a high awareness in the way that there is high awareness of things like breast cancer or prostate cancer. So on average, people go around with a blood cancer for about 2 years, getting misdiagnosed before eventually someone, you know, does a biopsy and realizes this was the cause of the problem. But the challenge with that is that your immune system gets more and more compromised. So when you do need your treatment, you go into it feeling, you know, with the body much less strong and able to cope with it. So one of the things that I wanted to do was to actually bring patients together, which we've done through a Facebook group called Living with Follicular Lymphoma. And we're now 6,700 members, which is the largest group that's ever existed of FL patients. So they could swap best practices, new treatment ideas that are coming, clinical trials, lots of information. But more than that, support, because the mental challenge of living with an incurable cancer, sometimes for 10 plus years, that can be really hard for people. So that's one part of it. But the main part of it is to use the science and to raise funds so that what is already applicable for other cancers is able to be applied to this one. That's the desire.
And you say you've always been a positive person and say you're energetic and very positive, but did it make your priorities change? And have your priorities changed, or have you just sort of almost accepted it as part of your life and you're just going to continue as before?
Yeah, I think I've got quicker at decision making, if that's it. And I was always pretty determined and pretty quick, but when you're in a world where you literally have death kind of stare you in the face, it really makes you cut out the weeds of what matters, what's important. And so I think it's made me do that. I think I've become even more empathetic as in my life with other people that are going through challenges. I thought I understood, but I think it gives you a different understanding and connection with people. So they're probably the biggest things that I've seen.
And how, obviously your work were very supportive.
Yeah.
How did your family deal with it?
So family work were incredibly supportive. And you asked a question before, I don't think I answered properly, which was around, you know, you threw yourself back in. And I did, because if I wasn't having treatment, then I was the same really as I was a few days earlier, just with the thing in my head now telling me the word cancer. And the biggest change was getting used to the fact that all cancers are not the same. And yet we think of them as the same, which is either you treat it or you're going to die. And there's sort of no grey middle ground. So that was one of the hard things with the family, because they hear the word cancer like other people hear the word cancer. Telling the children was the worst thing, without question, the worst thing, the most emotional, hardest thing we've ever done. But they kind of get used to it, and that becomes our new normal. And so that's what we all now know. And they've just been really supportive and really helpful. Even like with COVID, where we went earlier into lockdown, a couple of weeks before, they were like, no questions. They were like, we want to help you, Mum, we want to support you. So we physically haven't left the house. We haven't walked past the front door in 8 weeks.
Wow, yeah, that's a long time, isn't it?
Mm.
Right, I've got some questions here. One is actually follows on from that, really. You said family were your number one priority. How do you balance a huge workload while keeping your family the priority?
Yeah, so I made decisions at different points in my career. So before I came to Facebook, I worked 4 days for 16 years. And that was because I didn't think I could be a good mom, a good wife, daughter, and good at work if I didn't have that extra. I needed that extra day. Now that meant I made some sacrifices in my career, but family were my priority, and I always knew that. So that's how I balanced that and squared that in my head. And then that's just carried on. So I also talked earlier about this, you know, this idea of what is normal. There is no such thing as normal. My children only know our life together as their normal. And one of my kind of most surreal / proudest moments was when my youngest child, Zach, years ago, he was about 10 at the time, he's 15 now, said, came home one day and went, "Mum, the weirdest thing." And I was like, "What?" He goes, "You know, Tom's mum doesn't work. How weird is that?" And I was just like, you know, that's the ultimate definition of a child. Like, what is your normal? It isn't as Disney used to portray it to be, you know, the perfect white privet hedge and the mum and dad. And that's just not real for anybody now. So that, I think, has been a really, really important thing for us. And then it's about making sure I'm there for the stuff that really matters. And as they've got older, they can share what the stuff is that really matters to them easier. In the earlier days, I used to guess it. And it was interesting. I was talking to my daughter about it earlier. We did a chat at Facebook with the mums. And one of the things, you know, I never did the pick up at the school gates. I would do it on a Friday afternoon on my day off. That was it. And she goes, "I don't remember who picked me up at the school gate." She goes, I remember when you were there and the stuff we did together. I remember that we didn't fight, because when you used to come in and, you know, you would work 2 nights late, you wouldn't work 2 nights late, you'd be home. There were real conversations. And so there was no point fighting with you. It was much more that I just wanted to share with what I was up to. And I just thought it was interesting, because I can't remember who picked me up at the school gates either. It's sort of, in the greater scheme of things, it doesn't matter. But for the mom, it's like, it feels like the worst thing that you haven't done it. And actually, it doesn't matter.
I so agree with you on that thing around quality time, because I, like you, have always worked and worked hard and worked long hours. And actually, I always believe, and I think as my kids are getting older, I can have the conversation with them, that it's those moments that you create that they remember, the holidays or the Friday night dinners or whatever it may be, that your rituals, those are the things that stick with them, hopefully.
Well, she said it. It wasn't me that said it, and I didn't pay her to say it. But it was true that we just, you know, we put so much pressure on ourselves, and it's actually sometimes don't sweat the little things. And it was a good reminder, again, in the house where we've divided up who's doing the cooking, the cleaning, different things at different nights. And my 21-year-old Danny just turned around and went, "Mum, you're just going to have to drop your house standards a little bit at the moment." And I was like, you know, that's pretty good advice. And so sometimes I'm just like, don't look in there. It's not a good look.
I'm not even going to turn mine around because my lounge at the moment looks like a Lego, I don't know, dump. Basically, my little one's obsessed. Right, there's another question here. How do you deal with a woman who isn't prepared to help? My female manager doesn't support anyone in our organisation.
That's really hard. Madeleine AllBright had a good phrase on that, didn't she? Special place in hell for women that don't help other women. I had that earlier in my career. And actually the hardest person I ever worked for was a woman who just made my life a misery. She took pleasure in making me cry. And actually the greatest allies I found at that time were the men around me that really stood up and protected me and defended me and just made her see that this was not a fair thing to do. So I'd go around that situation and look for people to be helpful elsewhere. That's the only thing that you can do.
I agree. And I'm even harsher than that, because I would say I've also had dreadful female bosses at certain parts of my career. And if you keep getting blocked by your boss and completely unsupported, you need to leave. Because unless they're going anywhere, your career's not going to move, you know. So if you're constantly squashed or blocked, I think you just have to think about whether that's the right place to be. And of course, it might be that you can move department or you can try and look for other opportunities. But I've seen so many people who sort of stick it out, hoping that that person will change, but the realization that you can't change people, you can only change yourself, is an important one. Anyway, I'll get off my soapbox. Right, another one here. What advice would you give to mature entrepreneurs, who need to go back into traditional organizations?
Well, I think you should be some of the most exciting talent that is out there, a mature entrepreneur. And actually the most successful entrepreneurs are the ones that are, it's not the 23-year-old in the garage. It is the 40 plus something. And I think there is more of an appetite now for companies looking for, I'm not even going to say old, because I'm 48 and 3/4, and I don't think of myself as old, but I quite like the word mature. So a more mature talent. By the way, I feel very old at experience. I feel very old at Facebook, where, you know, the average, our CEO is, I think, 34. So, you know, it's a very different mindset. What I would say is be curious. I think play to your strengths, you know, be confident in the knowledge that you have, which will give you a competitive advantage, but make sure that you're also curious and you know what's going on. And whether that means hanging out with some of the younger people in the organization to learn from them. I actually feel very lucky that my kids are the ages that they are, and they're always telling me what the new thing is to look at and to check out. So they laugh at me because, of course, all kids think their parents are old-fashioned. But I'm working hard at being a little bit cooler.
No, but I love that. I think that whole kind of reverse mentoring, I don't even think it is that now. It's how you can help, you know, intergenerationally, how you can actually support and learn from each other is interesting. That's what we love at AllBright, mixing it up. Right. Do you have any advice for approaching or finding a mentor?
I just ask them. I think I would think about what you're missing, and then look around your network and see who the person is, male or female, that might actually match up to who that person could be. And it might be that you might not get the perfect one straight off. It might be that you might have to try it a couple of times. But my advice that I would have is, before you even start with a mentor, think why you want a mentor. One of the things that I've learned at Facebook, which has been an amazing exercise, is something around vision writing and then vision sharing. So vision writing is literally what it says, but you apply it for your life and take the best practices for business. So the tip that I use is that I write my vision a year from now. So if I was writing it today, it's May 2021, and I'm looking back on the year. And the way that you look back is across 3 buckets. You look back at it on your business, your personal, and your community. And community matters because it's proven that people that give back are much more fulfilled and happier. And so you chunk it down over, what am I going to achieve over the next year? And I sit with my family. This is not an easy exercise. And the first time you do it, if you're really honest about it, it's really bloody difficult. And so, you know, you can have some real emotional stuff there. You know, how often you want to be with your parents, how often you want to see your husband, how often you want, and what are you going to do with each of your kids? So my first year of writing this, I was like, right, I'm going to be the perfect wife. I'm going to have a date night with my husband every week. I'm going to exercise 4 times a week. Like, rubbish. It's not achievable. It's not going to happen. It's like writing fantasy. where it's really specific. These are the things that you're going to do and by when. So Johnny and I put and committed to doing, we'll do a date night once a month. With the kids, there were like 2 or 3 things they really wanted to do over the year that they wanted me to be a part of. So I could write those things in charity work, what I was going to do. And then business, they're almost the easy ones because on the whole, they get given to you or you look for what you want to do. So it's a really good exercise. And then once you've written it, then you should share it with kind of your mentors. You should share it with your manager and your peers because they'll be the people that help you to actually make it happen.
Wow, that's amazing. You have to be quite brave to do that as well, to share it with so many people.
Oh, so scary. And then I shared it with the whole of EMEA, which was probably one of the scariest things to do. But then you're role modeling how to do it right. And then that gives everybody else the confidence to feel that they can share this stuff as well.
Yeah, amazing. Sorry, I know we're supposed to be drawing to an end, but these questions are coming in. Any advice on making a pivot at a senior managerial level without taking too many steps back?
Well, sometimes you do need to take a step back in order to take a step forward. But I think it's also about understanding the context of why you want to do that. So, you know, and that's one of the things that I've seen as a real challenge of sometimes attracting talent to Facebook, where people have had grand titles like CEO or COO of a much smaller organization, and maybe they'll be coming in as a client partner or a head of. And that some people sometimes cannot get their heads around that. So I would think about why you're looking to move. What is it that are things that are the real motivators behind it? And then look to see what the difference was. Is it that you're reducing money? Is it a fancy title? What are the things that are going to make you happy at these times? And therefore, understanding that can really be beneficial to understanding where you want to go.
Post-COVID lockdown, what are your views on working from home? I'll take that as the last question. Sorry, I'm getting. Yeah,
one of the things that's been lucky at Facebook is that we've not practiced presenteeism. So I've been very used to seeing people working from home or working from hotel rooms at different times. I think there's going to be a big mindset shift in people working from home. And given that we're not going to come out of COVID anytime soon, it's going to be a dripping out and a phasing. I think for those that are able to work at home, we're going to see these types of practices carry on for a lot longer. And I think people will get better at it. They'll understand better the tips and the tricks around it. So I think it will be very empowering for women in particular as well. So I'm excited about it.
Yeah, and thank goodness for technology, otherwise we wouldn't be able to have this conversation right here, right now. Thank you so much, Nicola. That was amazing. It was a whistle-stop tour. Thank you for all your insight. Always such a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you to everyone for joining us. Don't forget to sign up at AllBright Connect for a full listing of events. Tomorrow, Debbie's talking to entrepreneur and designer Kelly Hoppen on Instagram Live at 4. And I will be chairing a Zoom panel at 8 p.m. With some leading women in the marketing industry. In fact, it's a Wackle Wednesday, Nicola. You'll be pleased to hear. We're doing this new series, who will reveal their predictions for the future of work for the next generation of women. And my Lego monster is now back, so that means it must be time for me to finish. Thank you so much, everyone. Have an amazing day, and thank you, Nicola.
Thank you for having me, and I'm looking forward to a G&T in the club very soon.
Me too.
Take care.
Bye.